What keyword ranking strategies are you currently using? The entire goal for ranking is how many orders can we possibly get through that one specific search term. Now, I know there's a lot of talk in our space around like, oh, target like long tail search variations of the keyword and all that stuff. That does help. It's not going to have the most impact. So the most impact for any ranking keyword is going to be getting orders specifically through that search, getting a lot of orders. So we don't just want one, we want a lot. And also making sure that our click-through rate and our conversion rate are really high on those key terms. So I'll be honest with you, the biggest impact on ranking you can have is really by picking the right keywords. So if your question was, how do I figure out what keywords do I rank on? I would say like look for things that you can afford to spend a lot, i.e. you're not losing money, meaning ACoS isn't like so crazy high that you can't afford it. You want to look for things that you have really good conversion rates. Bonus points if you have good click-through rates here, but I would go for conversion rates over click-through rates. And then you just want to like put money towards that. Now, if you say, how do I rank on this specific keyword, then that question is a little bit different. And I'm just going to tell you like push volume. Now, what I recognize is that me saying, hey, push volume through a one specific search might mean that that's not super profitable. So that's where I'm saying like the real trick is going to lie in the actual targets that you select to rank on. Other things, some pro tips and some pro hacks are more advanced but can be helpful here, is if you have a specific search where it's like crazy expensive and you just don't really have the budget for it, make sure you're selecting keywords where you can afford to spend that budget on it. But if we're on a specific keyword, you want to make sure that you're showing high enough in search that you can really get those good conversions and get those eyeballs on the product. But maybe you can't afford a ton of clicks because there's a lot of clicks and they're really expensive. Use the budget as sort of a lever to cap or meter how much money you are spending for that ranking play. Now, how effective that is going to be how many orders your market is making, and that's relative. So when I talk about trying to get a large amount of orders, it's relative to the other competition that is on that particular search page. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Ask Junglr. This is the time and the place where you can get answers to your most pressing Amazon advertising questions. I'm super stoked. Already seeing a lot of really good questions in the chat today, which is awesome. So I'm going to give you guys quickly, for those of you who have not joined in on one of these before, the format of this is drop whatever and any Amazon advertising questions you have into the chat. I will pull those up and I will give you answers. So for context, hey, my name is Elizabeth Greene. We've been running and managing Amazon advertising accounts for 6 or 7 years now. More than that, just myself personally, which means we've seen a lot, we've done a lot, and we are also on the cutting edge of a lot of more advanced tactics. So you want to talk about like sponsored products prompts now coming out, sponsored products video ad, AMC, DSP, all kinds of crazy stuff. But we also have experience across a wide variety of categories as well. One of the most notable, and I would say a little bit more difficult, and I am prompted by it because I do see some questions in the chat on that specific category, is the clothing category or any like other really large variation, high returns, low conversion rates. By the way, clothing, much lower conversion rates. Everyone's like, oh, 10% on average on Amazon. Not in clothing. A lot of times in clothing, 5% is considered a high conversion rate, but it definitely varies. So I, without further ado, shall go ahead and pull up your questions. By the way, I would recommend, if you have any Amazon ad question, if I say something that triggers you, if you guys want to follow up, I love it when I'm talking through a question and somebody adds additional context, then I can pull that up. I highly recommend you do so, because last week I had a couple people who asked some really good questions, but I was like, I am so sorry. I am up against time. So I'm here for a solid, I would say solid hour. I'm going to have to jet about 5 minutes early today because I got another live. So I'm hopping straight in from this live onto another one. We're talking about AI usage for Amazon sellers, which is a fantastic one. So if anyone wants links to those, feel free. But without further ado, again, I'm gonna just go ahead and get into it. A couple people are saying hello, so hello to you as well. Someone's saying good luck. Thanks. It is definitely, I can say, daunting to have to come up here, not know what the heck is going to be asked. But to be honest, I do find these Thursday lives, I don't want to say easy, but it's like it doesn't require a lot of prep work because I've been prepping for the last 6 or 7 years, right? And day in and day out, running an agency that sees many things across many different accounts. That's my prep work. So it's a lot, but it's what I do day in and day out anyway. Cool. So the first question, this one's got a couple parts to it. So let me pull up these questions in rapid fire and we will get into it. So the first question is, my brand is in the apparel category, women. We actually have a couple brands across the apparel category and multiple different subsections of that. But the question was, my current return rate is 40%, which is high. I would say 40% is high. In my experience, sometimes between a 15 to 20% return rate is pretty average for clothing. Now, it does depend, and it also depends on some other factors. And I found that sometimes higher priced items tend to have a higher conversion rate, not always. But the question was, and there was another for context, this is in the US. All right, good context. So the question is, what steps in terms of listing optimization, distribution, and PPC optimization do I need to achieve below a 15%? So I would say, obviously, jumping from a 40 to a 15 is high. So what you need to understand is why people are returning your products. If you have a return rate that is that high, there is something that they are not getting. Like, whenever a product is returned, unless somebody's just a jerk and like uses it and return it, which that happens, generally speaking, though, it's because an expectation has not been met. Case in point, one of our clothing brands had a particular size of pant that just notoriously had a high return rate above 30%. And so the way in which you can delve in and understand why you have a high return rate is by going and reading the comments from people who are returning that item. So you need to get in there. And I know not everybody leaves comments or leaves really helpful comments, but you will typically, if you go through them, especially if you have a high return rate like you do, you should have quite a few comments to read through. You want to look for patterns. So an example with this one pant item that was a high return, it was because they were more slim fit pants. And so because they were more slim, they weren't fitting as well. So what you need to do is you need to recognize why an item is returned, and then you need to go and adjust your listing, mainly your image stack for that. So what was done with this particular product is I think they went and made sure that the size was very apparent. They put slim fit in a lot of the wording on the title. And there's just a lot. You need to figure out, again, why there's a disconnect. So on some items, I've noticed it's that they're saying that the color wasn't what they were expecting. And so, okay, then we need to do a better, like when we're putting together our images, are we not being super clear with the color of the item? Are they expecting something to, so what you need to do is you need to go and analyze the disconnect from what the customer was expecting and then what actual product is, adjust the listings, i.e. mainly the main image stack, to try and help them understand it better. So if they thought it was smaller, if they thought it was bigger, if, again, whatever that is how I would go ahead with that. And I would say just recognize if you're at a 40% return rate, you definitely need to bring that down. I'm sure that's cutting into margins, may possibly be making you lose money at some point. However, I would say maybe try and get closer to a 20%. It just depends on what the margins can support. And then to be honest, we have had some brands in the clothing category. Again, it might just be that the cut of the garment just isn't what people are expecting. And it's really difficult to sort of even with updates to the listing, really get people to understand that. And so, I know in one of our accounts, what they're doing is they've actually discontinued that particular pant, and then they have another version of it coming out that kind of mitigates a lot of those issues, which is an ideal. I get. That being said, sometimes that is kind of necessary. All right. Got another question. Moving on. How do you research keywords when you launch a new PPC campaign? So I am a huge fan of Data Dive. We really like that. We prior were using a lot of other things. Smart Scout's a good one. Obviously, Helium 10's an OG. A lot of the team was super comfortable with Helium 10, so that was kind of a default. Nothing against Helium 10, but I find that Data Dive gives you way more insights into your competition, and there's a lot more like filters and stuff that are already kind of like pre-applied that make it a lot easier to find what you need to much quicker than you can say like using Helium 10. So we're using Data Dive for that. Now in terms of, so that's how do you research keywords? I'm trying to think. Let me see if I can go through our training module. So we like to figure out like where we have at least I'm trying to remember, we're looking for high relevancy keywords, which is typically at least 5 of our competitors ranking in the top 5 position for the keyword, and search volumes above 500 tends to be our sweet spot. And then we like to select a handful of those keywords. Typically it depends on the ad budget. Probably you're looking somewhere between 10 and 15. Run those in exact match, but Data Dive is how we have been using doing keyword research. And if you have any other questions about that, let me know. How do you optimize PPC ad bids? What is your suggestion on the bidding? I could go on all day. about bid optimizations. Oh boy. Okay, so let me see if I can condense this into a way that is helpful but doesn't go absolutely bonkers. For context, when I say I can go down the rabbit hole on this, we have our own internal bid algorithm that we have built and perfected over the last 4 to 5 years. And there are so many nuances and use cases that we essentially have an algorithm that will account for pretty much any use case and allow us to make very fine tweaks to how the algorithm treats certain things. So I would say at a minimum, you are always going to have 4 buckets when it comes to ad optimization. You're going to have, is it above the target A cost? Is it below the target A cost? Does it have clicks with no orders on it? And does it have low or no impressions? And then you will have 2 actions you will do, maybe 3. You'll either raise the bids, you will lower the bids, or you will leave the bids alone. So you have 4 buckets, 3 actions, right? The trick really, I would say the biggest nuance is understanding the target ACoS and setting different ACoS targets for specific campaigns targets. Example would be my ranking campaigns should have a much higher ACoS target than my low bid auto campaigns. And I should be very, very careful when I am decreasing my ranking campaigns because those are integral to the performance of the account. Or on the flip side, I don't want to be super aggressive. And I've actually seen some really horrible things happen to accounts because they were not setting different ACoS targets. So I would say at the very least, within your 2 buckets of high ACoS and low ACoS, your target for that specific campaign is going to determine which bucket it falls into. So an example would be, let's say you had a target ACoS for the account of 25%. Well, what if your ranking keyword is running at a 35%. Well, if I say 25% across the board, my ranking keyword is now falling into my high ACoS bucket, when in actuality, I might be fine with that one target running at 35% because I'm noticing increasing rankings day over day or week over week, and my total ACoS is completely within my KPIs. In that case, that is not technically, that one should not be classified as a quote high ACoS keyword. And so if you can set different target ACoS parameters, and then you can also make sure that you are using that to segment things into buckets, and then being sensitive to the decreases on ranking targets on things with high order velocity, then that's kind of that. I would say that's the thesis and that's the basis for our bid optimizations. In terms of the minute details, I can give you minute as you want. But I have found what we essentially do is we set a variable bid ceilings and bid floors. So there's still a algorithm behind it, which at this point we've switched over to using revenue per click algorithms, which says it's your sales multiplied by your target ACoS divided by the number of clicks. And essentially what that formula tells you is, if I have this much conversion rate, what should my bid be to achieve my target ACoS? Now, as you and I both know, just because we want to be able to get the same amount of clicks at 10 cents versus $1 doesn't mean we're necessarily going to be able to do that. It is not taking into account any sort of marketplace or auction factors. And so what a good algorithm will do is understand that everything in isolation, and you need to understand the market factors, and a good advertiser should be able to select portions of the account where you need to be, again, much more careful about how you're increasing or decreasing. So it's a series of bid ceilings and bid floors based on the importance of the target to that account. And the importance of the target, some of that is hard-coded just based on order velocity and actually match types. I can't tell you how many people do not factor in match types into their optimizations. That is a huge miss. It destroys accounts. Yes, you will hear that broad match can get low CPCs. If left unchecked, broads and autos will destroy an account, especially during Q4. So it's understanding the things that you need to be careful of. And so again, our bidding algorithm accounts for the things that we know can be like across the board hard coded, and then we allow to set individual bids, which allows us to leverage an algorithm that is highly integral, but that also allows us to get very segmented and to customize based on the individual account needs, which personally I think has been game changer for us. But I'm sorry, that was very long. I don't know if any of that would help. Was helpful, let me know. Elizabeth loves the lives, just wants a product for using AMC, either custom audience or default audiences. Do I need to wait until I achieve a certain number of sales? Yes, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, and do not quote me on this, but there is a certain amount of people who have to be in that audience. So you have to have a certain audience size to be able to run it. I want to say it's like 1,000 people. So one of the audiences that we have found does work really well is shoppers who have added your products to their cart but have yet to purchase. And then obviously you have to have a certain number of those customers within the look back time frame for that to even be able to be triggered. So in that case, I would say you're probably gonna have to wait on this until you have more data, but that's fine. There's plenty of things to do in your ad account before you get to AMC audiences. I'm curious about your budget estimate video regarding the levers. At the risk of making you repeat yourself, could you just help me understand what levers to move the bid should be used first? That's a great question. I would say you want to move all of them and just make sure that whatever your system is running together, okay? What do I mean by that? So the question, I put out a video on that. There's more levers changing your CPCs than just the bids. Now, I'm a big believer in bids are a huge factor, but the other ones are the campaign bidding strategy, the placement percentages, the budgets, obviously bids, and then a fifth kind of bonus one I put in there is your negative keywords. So what I would say is that for negative keywords, we will give the entire account a once over every single week, possibly twice a week, depending on the amount of spend to spot for negatives. And then I want to say like on a monthly basis, or if we're noticing a lot of one-off click keywords, we'll be running an n-gram analysis to determine if there are certain root words that we need to be careful of, right? So if you already have that sort of structure, you should automatically catch those things. Now, in terms of the budgets, again, things that can work in tandem. If you're optimizing your bids, you can also use your budgets as sort of a cap to allow you to test certain bids and then uncap the budget, which will allow you to just generate more impressions if the budget's running out. I'm a big believer in allowing budgets to run out if the campaign is not achieving the desired targets. Now, when I say desired targets, again, I would like, as I said, with the bid optimization, my desired targets for a ranking campaign is going to be completely different than say like a low bid auto. If I have a low bid auto that's running at 50% ACoS, I'm like, cut that puppy off. What are we doing? We need to go optimize that, right? If I have a ranking keyword that's running at 50% ACoS, but my total ACoS is well within my KPIs, and I'm noticing that it's my ranking is improving on that target week over week, we're fine, right? Because the account's still profitable. And so in terms of like increasing budgets for those things, you need to be very careful on what you deem a not performing campaign. So again, it is specific. But in terms of like which levers to move bids, I would say if you focus on bid optimization as your kind of like main thing, and then you do negative keywords, you check your negative. If you check and adjust your placement percentages, I cannot tell you how many people I see who set up placement percentages and it's like a set it and forget it. No, you want to be adjusting those minimum once a week. And then your budgets, I would say minimum check and adjust once a week. So as long as you have a handle on all of those things, why I sort of put those in there is because I can't tell you how many people like set up a bidding strategy, set up placements, set up, a certain budget, and it's just never checked and never optimized. As long as you have a consistent cadence for optimization and looking at those parts of the account, you should be good. You should be good. All right. I'm the founder of the original Maverick scrubbing pad. Congratulations. A new kind of cleaning brand on Amazon, the strong reviews, but no PPC history. We're in a competitive category, and our product is unique with a few direct competitors. Was the best PPC approach for a new brand like ours, striving to grow, focus on category keywords, competitor targeting, or a balanced mix? That is a great question. So it sounds like, so if you have strong reviews on Amazon, I'm assuming that means you have some good sales, which means there's a couple ways you can play this. So one of them, you have your offensive strategy, and because it seems like you have a recognized brand, you also have the ability to run a defensive strategy from the get-go. So a defensive strategy is targeting your own branded keywords. Now, this is not going to grow market share, but I would take a look at your branded. I would go into Amazon, I would just search your keywords, and I would see, are those other competitors popping up on your branded terms? Are they pushing you down? In that case, I would recommend a defensive strategy. If that's not happening, then maybe you could still run a defensive strategy, but I would run it low bids. And also, whenever I'm running defensive strategies, I don't like to lose money to play defense. unless somebody's going after me hard and I just have to eat it, which to be honest, that case is very few and far between. I always want to make sure I'm making money if I have to target branded terms. So that's like the one thing that you can do right now. Now, the second thing is I would want to go, you want to gain some market share, which is going to be helpful to grow sales. Gaining market share, i.e. ranking on specific keywords. Now, if you're in a competitive category, but you have a unique product, to be honest, sometimes that's a little bit difficult to demonstrate on the Amazon platform. So I would say, I mean, you're making sales, so it sounds like you're doing well. But I would make sure that your image stack, specifically, bullet points are helpful. A+ content is helpful, but really your image stack is going to be the thing that will help you stand out. And really demonstrate the benefit. So I would make sure, to the best of my ability, that a shopper could clearly understand within the first couple images why I'm different than the market and why it's a benefit and when they should buy me. And then in terms of strategy, there's 2 different strategies you can run, and I would test them both. You said you're unique with a few direct competitors. I would take a look at where your direct competitors are ranking. So you can do a reverse ASIN search. Again, we use Data Dive, really like them. There's Helium 10, Jungle Scout. I'm sure there's other ones where you could do a reverse ASIN search. You basically want to understand where are those direct competitors ranking. That will give you an idea of keywords that you can target. And then the other thing you can do is you can run product targeting. So any of the competitors in the market that you believe you have a stronger offer than them, I would test those in a product targeting campaign. Oftentimes, for not always, but it's been my experience, and so I think it's well worth testing, that products that are a little bit unique and sort of a better offer, but in a saturated category, often do the best with product targeting. Again, not always. That's why I'm saying test keyword and test product targeting. And I would run those in a sponsored product exact match ASIN targeting. There's expanded ASIN targeting. There's exact match ASIN targeting. I would want to run that in exact match. And then the other last one that I would say is, if you have the creatives, oftentimes, again, not always, but in saturated categories, if you have a product that has a clear value proposition, again, sometimes it's a little bit hard to demonstrate that from search, but you can run a sponsored brands video ad, again, targeting the specific keywords that you find, again, doing that competitor research. And I would like to launch those in modified broad match is how I would launch those. But that will get you started with like a really good, solid strategy. And then what you'll do is you'll look at search reports. Okay, what's working, what's not working? Can I find any other targets? Does product targeting work better? Do videos work better? And then you can pivot to whatever is working better. All right, let's see. All right, so we're talking about, where was it? The return rates. Sorry, there's a lot of questions today. I'm going to do my best to get to everybody. But it is a first come, first serve. So if you got a question, I would drop it quick because we got about 30 minutes left. After fixing the listing images, title, clarity in terms of site color, even mention the size of bullet points on the first. Quality is also good. FBA we have apart from what other point? Yeah, so fixing listing images. I would honestly, you know what I would do is, again, I would look for, you got to look for clusters and why they're returning things. And you're saying like even mentioning the sizes in the first bullet point, to be honest, most people don't read bullet points. It's all in the images. So you would want to clearly demonstrate as much as possible within your images. And sometimes like listing optimization, especially when it comes to this, is like pivot, test. So just because you did it once doesn't, and if you're still having the return issue, it's not fixed. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get down to a 15% overnight, but if you're optimizing the listing and it's helping answer those customer questions, again, around the clusters of why people are returning, you should see it at least go down a little bit. over the couple weeks or so. So I would keep testing. And another really good thing there is to get somebody who doesn't know about your product to be like, hey, what do you think of this? Or be like, hey, did you understand, like, here's my listing, what colors do you think they are? Or try and ask a more open-ended question that's not like leading, but that would allow you to get from them, like, if you're trying to understand size, like, hey, what do you think of the sizing? Or what kind of colors do you think this one is? Or if it's big, do you think this is oversized, undersized? Like, what, just see if you can get like a fresh pair of eyes on your listing, because sometimes we think that we've told the shopper clearly, but I can't tell you how many times I've looked at a listing and it's like, when you're editing the images, sometimes they're so close. Like, you need to like zoom out and look at the images on a very, very small screen, because oftentimes people are they're looking on their phone or they're just flipping through. So again, I'm not saying you didn't make improvements, but I'm saying that if the issue isn't solved, there's probably more improvements to be made. And so honestly, I would say a fresh pair of eyes is probably really helpful. Where do you extract or pile up category bench? How do you extract or pile up? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. I think you have to just look at it when you're looking at the category benchmark report. Can you follow up and give me what report you're referring to? Because I think I know what you're talking about, but it might not be clear, and I want to make sure I give you the right answer. All right, questions regarding broad match campaigns. When we notice that our main keyword is receiving high volume of clicks without converting, should it be advisable to negate the main keyword from the broad match campaign? The goal would be to refine the campaign, identify more relevant high converting keywords. Could you share insights that effectiveness of that strategy and any best practices for branding broad? Yeah, so if I'm getting enough clicks that I'm confident it doesn't convert for a broad match campaign, I would be fine with negating it. Now, the other question is that, so there's two possible answers here. So one would be like, are we targeting that keyword somewhere else and it's converting well in the other target? And in that case, like, yeah, I don't want to ever get clicks that are not converting. The second possible thing is that my product isn't strong enough to compete on a main keyword yet. That happens as well. If that is the case, I would still negate it, but I would want to make a note to myself, set a reminder that, hey, maybe we need to go back and revisit it, because if I've negated it and I don't have it anywhere else, it's possible that I may not resurface. If I do, maybe I need more reviews, price testing, whatever the case may be, to be able to be competitive enough to compete on that keyword. So if I don't have a way to like trigger a revisit, that would worry me. But otherwise, from like just strictly a what am I saying? Strictly from a optimization standpoint, yes, if it's got too many clicks, negate it. Do you have any bids up and down, or down only, or fixed bids? Good question. So if it is a ranking campaign, oftentimes we will launch it in fixed bids. If it is a low volume or a low bid campaign, we will use down only. If we notice that a campaign is performing really well and we're okay with testing a little bit higher CPCs and the ACoS is within our targets, we have been testing dynamic up and down bidding. But if that starts to underperform, then of course we would revert it back. Do you recommend bid up and down for high traffic days? No. So the caveat here is I wouldn't recommend switching a campaign that already has a strong history with another campaign strategy to dynamic up and down just because it's, quote, a high traffic day. That being said, if I have a campaign that I have already tested with dynamic up and down and it's hitting my ACoS target and everything's good, In that case, I would be fine. I'm not like so worried about changing it from dynamic bids up and down, if that makes sense. Also looking for category benchmarks. Would please make a separate video. Are you talking about the category bench, the report? Is that brand metrics inside of ad? Because that's the one that I'm assuming you're talking about, is the brand metrics inside of ad console. If that's the case, then it's simply going through and checking it periodically. I don't know if there's like a specific download or cadence to that. I could talk through that. But in terms of category, that's jogging my memory, but for some reason I'm not remembering. I'm looking at right now instead of an ad account where brand metrics. I know they have, I mean, like, so brand metrics is like highly helpful. Is that what you're talking about? If you have any like links or something that you could talk specifically about what you mean by category benchmark report, that would be helpful, because I don't know if I'm thinking of the right thing, and I want to make sure that I am pointing you in the right direction. Your question, make a clear video on budget projection for launching new brands and established brands. We could talk about that. The budget projections are, to be honest, so a lot of them is like, it's just math. Any kind of budget projections is just math. The question is, because there's a variable, in fact, of I'm assuming as I scale, I get XYZ for every ounce of ad dollar I put in. You can't assume that that number is going to remain the same forever, right? You're not going to get the same efficiency at scale. I mean, we have this whole, let me zoom in for you guys here. Like, we have a goal forecasting. You can base it on an order goal, or you can base it on a sales goal. So in this example, like, say I had a brand that now you again, for product forecast, this is a simplified version, but like, we have, like, say you wanted to have $10,000 in sales goal, you had a $25 price, your expected CPC was 50 cents, your expected conversion rate is 10%, and you're assuming that in the beginning all of your orders are coming from your ad sales, so you have 100% ad sale percentage. This is looking at a forecasted total A cost, of 20% and a forecasted total A cost of 20%. Again, and then you would say, okay, after a little bit, I'm assuming I can get some organic orders, then my total A cost goes down to 15%. Where this gets hairy and this is giving you a forecasted budget of, you need at least 1,600 monthly budgets to hit a sales goal. Now, that being said, like, let's say this is where having forecasted and actuals is very beneficial, because let's say you thought you could launch it at a $25 price point, and then you realize that you need to lower the price point to get you need to lower the price point to get momentum, and you thought you could spend on a 50-cent CPC, and all of a sudden your CPC jumped up to 60 cents, and you expected a 10% conversion rate, but in actuality you probably ended up at a 7% conversion rate, and you only got 90 ad sale percentage. All of a sudden my forecasted went up from I can launch and have a 20% total A cost to, like, oh crap, I launched and I'm now to 35% total A cost, which makes it a little bit hairier. So honestly, it's not too difficult to do forecasting. It's more making sure you're benchmarking it off of what is reasonable given your particular category, is what I found is the most important. And I already mentioned bidding up and down for high traffic days. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at So in that case, we're a couple minutes out. Again, I'm going to have to hop a little bit early to go to another live. If anyone wants access or how to figure out where that other live is, more than happy to drop that in the comments. Again, I'm doing, it will be Noah from Mag and John Aspinall. We're going over how to leverage AI for Amazon sellers, which is awesome. Lots of cool, interesting things coming out with AI. Lots of ways that it doesn't work very well either as well. So there's lots to do with that. And with that being said, I'll hang around for 1 or 2 more minutes in case anyone else has an Amazon ad question. But unless that, I will probably go ahead and wish you all a amazing rest of your day. And for those of you joining in on the other live, excited to see you guys. And with that, I will catch you guys same time, same place next week, and we will chat then. Thanks so much, guys. Hopefully it was helpful. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.